No one expected the human touch to cure the alien princess. Her family was shocked in the vast expanse of the galaxy. On a world far from Earth, an advanced alien civilization found itself facing a crisis unlike any it had encountered before. Princess Lyra, the beloved heir to the throne of the Zythurian people, had fallen gravely ill. The royal healers, equipped with the most sophisticated technology and ancient medical knowledge, had tried everything. Still, her condition worsened by the day. The alien disease that plagued her seemed to have no cure, and the royal family was desperate. The Zythurians were not like humans. Their bodies were different, stronger, more resilient. But this disease, whatever it was, defied all known treatments. For weeks, Lyra had been lying in a specially designed chamber, surrounded by advanced machines that beeped and hummed with strange sounds. She had not spoken a word since the illness took hold, her once vibrant energy now reduced to a mere shadow of its former self. King Tharion, her father, paced the halls of the royal palace, his mind racing. He had consulted with the greatest minds of the kingdom, from the council of sages to the high priests who commanded the power of the stars. But none of their knowledge had helped. The disease had no name, no origin, and no cure. It was as if it was part of the very fabric of the universe, a cosmic malady that even the mighty Zythurians could not heal. News of the princess's worsening health had spread throughout the kingdom, and with it came whispers of despair. The people feared that the princess, who had been a symbol of hope and strength for them, might not survive. But despite the fear and grief, King Tharion held on to a single, fragile hope, a hope that something or someone could save his daughter. One day, as the king sat in the palace's grand hall, a messenger entered with a letter bearing the seal of the Galactic Federation. The letter was short, yet it held the promise of an answer to their problems. A human envoy, led by Dr. Samuel Carter, was scheduled to arrive within the next few days. The letter spoke of an ancient healing method, one practiced by humans, that might be able to save Princess Lyra. According to the Federation's records, Dr. Carter was an expert in this forgotten art. The method involved no machines, no high-tech equipment, just the touch of a human hand. The idea seemed absurd to King Tharion. The Zythurians had always relied on their advanced medical technology. The very notion of a human, a species so far behind their own in terms of technological achievements, having the ability to heal with mere touch felt like a cruel joke. But the king had nothing left to lose. Desperation pushed him to agree to meet with the humans. Dr. Samuel Carter and his team arrived a few days later, landing in the royal palace's outer courtyard in a sleek silver ship. The humans were escorted to the palace under heavy guard, their arrival met with the silent skepticism of the royal court. King Tharion had summoned his advisors and top healers to witness the humans' methods. If this was some sort of deception, the consequences would be severe. Dr. Carter, a tall man in his early 30s, stepped forward with calm confidence. He had studied the Zythurians extensively and knew the significance of his mission. With him was a small, diverse team of humans, each with their own expertise. But it was Carter who had been specifically chosen to address the crisis. His reputation as a healer, albeit one who employed ancient methods, had spread far and wide. He was the last hope, even though he had no idea whether his methods would work on such a different species. "Your Majesty," Carter began, his voice steady but filled with urgency, "I understand your skepticism, but I am not here to fail. The method I use is not one of technology, but of touch and energy. It may seem primitive, but it is effective. If you will allow me, I will try." The royal court murmured in disbelief. The alien doctors who had failed in their attempts to save Princess Lyra exchanged looks of contempt. They saw no value in what the human had to offer. But King Tharion, his heart heavy with worry for his daughter, nodded silently. "You have one chance, human," the king said, his voice laced with a mixture of hope and distrust. "If you fail, you and your people will leave our planet." Dr. Carter nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. He did not waste time with more words. He knew he had to act quickly, for the princess's life hung in the balance. The royal guards cleared the way, and Dr. Carter walked toward the chamber where Princess Lyra lay. The air in the room was thick with tension, the hum of machines barely audible as they worked to sustain her failing body. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her once lustrous hair lay limp against the pillow. Her chest rose and fell slowly, but each breath seemed more labored than the last. Dr. Carter stood beside her, his heart heavy with the weight of the situation. He had healed many, but never a creature like this. He placed his hands gently on Lyra's forehead, his fingers barely touching her skin. He closed his eyes, focusing all his energy, his mind, and his will on the task ahead. For a moment, nothing happened. The silence in the room was suffocating, and the alien healers stood by, watching closely. The king remained at the door, his eyes fixed on the human doctor, waiting for any sign that this would work. Then, slowly, a faint warmth began to emanate from Dr. Carter's hands. It was subtle at first, barely noticeable, but it grew stronger. Princess Lyra's pulse began to stabilize, and the machines that had been monitoring her vital signs gave off a soft beep of recognition. The color slowly began to return to her cheeks. The alien doctors gasped in shock. They had seen countless treatments, countless procedures, but nothing had ever worked like this. The warmth spread through Lyra's body, and she let out a deep, soft breath, her body finally relaxing. For a moment, Dr. Carter could hardly believe it himself. He stepped back, his hands still trembling from the intensity of the connection he had just formed. Lyra's breathing was steady now, and the one-sashen color of her skin had shifted to a more natural hue. It was nothing short of miraculous. King Tharion stepped forward, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Impossible! This cannot be! You have saved her! You have truly saved her!" Dr. Carter nodded, but he was not yet ready to celebrate. "It's not over yet," he said softly, "but it's a start." As the room filled with whispers of awe and amazement, Dr. Carter knew that this was just the beginning. His touch had healed the princess for now, but he could only wonder what other challenges lay ahead. Would the alien court accept this human healing method, or would they see it as a threat to their pride and power? And most importantly, what would Lyra herself think of this strange, healing bond? The future was uncertain, but for now, Dr. Carter had done what no one else had been able to do. The princess was alive, and the impossible had been made possible. The news of Princess Lyra's sudden recovery spread quickly throughout the royal palace, reaching every corner of the kingdom. Within hours, the palace was buzzing with excitement. No one could quite believe it. How had the human doctor managed to do what their greatest minds could not? How had a mere touch, a simple human act, restored their princess to life? King Tharion paced the halls of the palace, his mind racing. His daughter was alive, and for the first time in weeks there was hope in the air. Yet, even with her health improving, doubt lingered in the king's heart. The Zythurians had always been proud of their advanced technology, their scientific achievements, and their powerful healers. To rely on a human, on something so primitive, felt like a betrayal of everything they had worked for. But as he looked at his daughter lying in her chambers, now breathing steadily and with color returning to her skin, he could not deny the results. Lyra's eyes fluttered open, and for the first time in days she smiled. "Father," she whispered, her voice weak but clear. "What happened?" The king stood beside her, a mixture of relief and disbelief on his face. "You've been healed, my daughter, a human doctor, Dr. Samuel Carter. He did it." Lyra's eyes widened as she tried to sit up. "A human?" she asked, incredulous. "A human saved me." The king nodded, sitting beside her. "Yes, I don't understand it myself, but there is no doubt that he did. You are alive because of him." For the first time in days, the princess felt a spark of hope. She had seen the despair in her father's eyes, had heard the worried whispers of the royal doctors. The fact that she was now awake and healing was nothing short of a miracle. Outside her chamber, Dr. Carter stood with the royal healers, waiting for permission to speak with the princess. He had not expected this. He had not expected to be met with such awe, such disbelief. It was as if they were waiting for him to fail, but he hadn't failed. And now, he wondered how the Zythurian court would react to the fact that their great medical expertise had been bypassed by something as simple as human empathy. Dr. Carter had spent years studying alternative healing methods, methods that most people had long since abandoned. Touch, energy, the connection between people. These were things that humans had once known deeply, but had since pushed aside in favor of more mechanical, efficient ways of solving problems. He had always believed in the power of touch, the power of a human connection, but to see it work so effectively on a species so different from his own, well, it was a revelation. It was a turning point not just for Lyra, but for himself as well. When the royal healers finally allowed him to enter the princess's chamber, Dr. Carter walked slowly toward her bed, his hands clasped behind his back. Princess Lyra sat up, her eyes studying him with curiosity. "You are the one who saved me?" she asked, her voice still faint but gaining strength. Dr. Carter nodded, a modest smile crossing his face. "I did what I could. I can't explain how it worked, but it did. I only gave you what I knew." Lyra's gaze softened, and she reached out, taking his hand in hers. "Thank you," she whispered. "You've given me back my life." The human's touch was gentle, his fingers warm against her skin. It was an odd feeling, this alien, this human, saving her. But it was also a comfort, a reminder that not all solutions came from advanced technology or ancient medicines. Sometimes, healing came from simply being present, from reaching out and connecting. Over the following days, the news of Lyra's recovery spread like wildfire across the palace. The alien doctors and royal advisors, who had once doubted Dr. Carter's methods, now observed him with renewed interest. They had seen the results. They had seen their princess rise from the brink of death, and they could no longer deny the possibility that humans had something their own advanced systems lacked. Despite this, not everyone in the royal family was so eager to embrace the human healer. A faction of the court, led by Lord Valan, a powerful advisor to the king, was deeply troubled by the fact that a human had managed to heal their princess. For them, it was more than just a medical breakthrough. It was an affront to their pride. "You cannot be serious, Tharian," Lord Valan said one evening, his voice laced with irritation. "You would trust a human, a species so beneath us, to care for the royal bloodline? What next? Will we allow them to govern us as well?" The king sighed, his hand resting on his temple. "Valan, I understand your concerns, but the evidence speaks for itself. Lyra is alive, and that is because of Dr. Carter's method." "But this is madness," Valan spat, his voice rising. "You cannot possibly believe that this human with his primitive healing methods has something to offer us. He is not our equal." "And yet here we are," the king replied, his voice calm but firm. "Lyra is alive. We would do well to consider the possibilities that his methods open up for us. You and I may not understand how or why it works, but we cannot deny the results." Valan's face flushed with anger, but he said nothing more. He knew when to stop arguing, at least for now. But his resentment toward Dr. Carter and the human presence in the royal court was far from over. Meanwhile, Princess Lyra spent her days in quiet recovery, growing stronger with each passing hour. She often found herself reflecting on the events that had brought her to this point. She had been so close to death, so close to losing everything. And yet she had been saved by someone from another world, someone who had nothing to gain from her survival, someone who had simply wanted to help. In the days that followed, Lyra made it her mission to learn more about the human who had saved her. She asked Dr. Carter to speak with her, to share his knowledge, to tell her about the healing methods he had used. To her surprise, he agreed. They spent hours discussing the human approach to healing, the old ways that had been passed down through generations. Lyra listened with fascination, understanding that this was not just a gift but a window into a new way of thinking, a new way of looking at life. "You said that healing is about energy," Lyra remarked one day as she sat beside Dr. Carter in the palace gardens. "What do you mean by that?" Dr. Carter smiled, his eyes thoughtful. "Energy is the flow of life. It's in everything, the air we breathe, the light we feel, the warmth of a touch. It's not something you can see, but you can feel it. It's in every living thing, connecting us all." Lyra considered his words carefully. It was a concept she had never truly understood, at least not in the way Dr. Carter explained it. The Zythurians had always believed in their technology and their science, but this was something deeper. Something that transcended the physical. "I want to learn more," she said quietly, "not just about healing, but about your world, about humans." Dr. Carter looked at her, his eyes soft with understanding. "I'll teach you what I know. But there's one thing you must understand. Healing isn't just about fixing the body. It's about understanding the person, about connecting with them on a level that goes beyond words." Lyra nodded, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Perhaps. This is something we can share with my people. Perhaps there is more to life than technology." Dr. Carter smiled, and for the first time, Lyra felt a spark of something beyond mere recovery. She felt a sense of hope. Hope for her people, for her kingdom, and for a future where the human touch could bridge the gap between their worlds. Princess Lyra's health continued to improve as the days passed, and her presence once again graced the royal palace with its vitality. The shock of her miraculous recovery had not worn off. Everyone in the palace spoke of the human healer and the strange power of his touch. Even those who had initially dismissed him were beginning to reconsider. There was no denying it now. Princess Lyra was alive because of Dr. Carter, and that fact had sparked something deep within the royal court. Despite the growing acknowledgement of Dr. Carter's success, there were still those who refused to accept the idea that a human could possess knowledge or abilities superior to their own. Lord Valan, the king's most trusted advisor, was one of them. His pride in Zythurian medicine and his conviction that humans were an inferior species blinded him to the reality before him. To him, the idea of a human saving the princess was an insult. It wasn't just a matter of healing, it was a matter of status. Healing should not be done by such means, Valan muttered one evening as he sat with the royal council. It is unrefined, it is too primitive. But it worked, Queen Mara, Lyra's mother, replied softly, her voice carrying a mix of awe and hesitation. Our most advanced methods failed, but the human succeeded. Valan clenched his fists, his face contorting with frustration. It was luck, that's all, a lucky touch. Nothing more. The king, who had been silent for most of the conversation, now spoke. We cannot ignore the fact that the princess is alive. He saved her life when all our methods failed. Valan's eyes narrowed. You would let a human dictate the future of our people, Tharian. No, the king said firmly, but I would let him teach us. We have learned something we never considered before, and perhaps it is time for us to open our minds. The royal council shifted uneasily, caught between their loyalty to their advanced medical practices and the undeniable results that had come from Dr. Carter's unorthodox methods. Meanwhile, Princess Lyra had been spending her recovery days not just in rest, but in learning. She and Dr. Carter had spent hours talking, discussing healing, empathy, and the human connection. As she sat by the garden in the royal palace, her mind constantly turned over the concepts she was beginning to understand. The world of Zythurian medicine had always been one of machines, diagnostics, and precision. But the more Lyra learned from Dr. Carter, the more she realized that healing wasn't just about fixing a body. It was about understanding the soul. She had always known that a ruler had to understand the people they governed, but Dr. Carter's teachings opened her eyes to the deeper connection between all living beings. His methods weren't just a cure, they were a philosophy, a way of living. As she meditated on this newfound knowledge, her thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of her father, King Tharian. He stood tall, his posture regal but his face troubled. "Father," Lyra greeted him, sitting up from the garden bench. "What is it?" "Lyra, we need to talk," the king said, his voice grave. He glanced around to make sure no one else was near, and then motioned for her to follow him. They walked through the gardens in silence until they reached the quiet of the palace courtyard. The king paused, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon. "I've been thinking," he began, his voice heavy with concern. "You are our future, Lyra. You must understand that your recovery is not just a personal matter, it is a political one as well." Lyra looked up at him, confused. "What do you mean?" "The royal court is divided," the king continued. "There are many who are displeased with Dr. Carter's methods, and they are questioning our decision to trust a human. They believe it undermines our superiority, our pride as a people. They are afraid." Lyra frowned, her mind still reeling from the intense connection she had felt when Dr. Carter had healed her. "But father, he saved my life. He did something no one else could do." The king nodded, his expression softening. "I know, Lyra. But there are others who do not see it that way. Lord Valan, for instance, he is a man of pride and he sees this as a challenge to our power." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "But why? Why would they not be grateful? Why would they not see that we could learn from him?" King Tharian sighed deeply, placing a hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Because change is difficult, and because not everyone believes that what worked for you can work for others. There are those who think your recovery was a fluke, something beyond our understanding. They are afraid, Lyra, afraid that the old ways might no longer be enough." Lyra shook her head, her mind racing. "But surely we can see beyond our pride. We have the chance to change, to grow, and Dr. Carter, he's not just a healer, he's a teacher. He's shown me something I never knew existed." The king looked down at her, his gaze full of both affection and worry. "I know, my daughter, I can see the change in you, but the question remains, can the rest of our people accept this change? Can they see past their fear and their pride?" Lyra looked out at the sprawling gardens, her mind full of uncertainty. "If they can't, father, then they will be the ones left behind." The king's face hardened. "We will see what happens, Lyra, but be careful. Not everyone will be as open to this new way of thinking as you are, and if you push too hard, you may alienate those who are closest to you." Lyra nodded, understanding the weight of her father's words. Change was never easy, and it was clear that the kingdom's future was at a crossroads. Later that day, as the royal court gathered for a meeting, tensions were high. Lord Valen had made it clear that he would not stand by and let humans dictate their future. The discussion turned heated as the council members debated whether Dr. Carter's methods should be allowed to continue. "Healing by touch," Lord Valen scoffed. "That is not the way of our people. We have advanced beyond such things." "But what if it works?" another council member asked. "What if we could combine our technology with his methods? What if we could learn from him?" Lord Valen's eyes flashed with anger. "And what if it's a danger to us? What if it weakens us?" King Tharion stood and raised a hand, calling for silence. "Enough! We will not make a decision based on fear alone. We will allow Dr. Carter to continue his work with the princess. But we will also observe, we will learn. And only when we have fully understood his methods will we decide what is best for our people." The room fell quiet. It was a decision that left the council members uneasy, but it was the king's will. There was no turning back now. Princess Lyra's heart sank as she listened from the shadows. She had hoped for more support, more understanding, but she knew that the road ahead would not be easy. Dr. Carter's methods had shown her a new way, but that way was not yet accepted by all. And yet, as she walked through the palace halls later that evening, she felt a renewed sense of determination. If she had to lead her people into a new era, she would do so with or without their support. She believed in Dr. Carter's methods, and she believed in the power of human touch. It was the future, her future, and she would fight for it. The tension in the air was palpable, but in Lyra's heart there was a quiet resolve. She had been healed, and now it was time for the kingdom to heal as well. The days following the royal council's decision were filled with tension. The palace, once a place of regal calm, had become a battleground for competing ideals. Princess Lyra could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her with every passing hour. Her mind, still buzzing with the knowledge Dr. Carter had shared, could not shake the feeling that she was standing on the edge of something monumental. Yet she knew that change, true change, was never simple. Despite the king's decision to allow Dr. Carter to continue his work with the princess, there was a sense of unease that lingered over the royal court. While King Tharion had acted with the best intentions, his willingness to embrace the human healer had angered many within the palace. Lord Valen, who had led the opposition, made it clear that he would not stand idly by while a human was given such power over the future of the Zythurian people. As Lyra walked through the palace gardens one afternoon, her thoughts turned inward. She was still recovering from the illness, but she could feel her strength returning each day. The human healing method had worked, and she knew it had done more than save her life. It had opened her eyes to a new way of seeing the world. Yet the divide within the royal court was growing, and she felt torn between loyalty to her people and the belief that Dr. Carter's methods held the key to a brighter future. Dr. Carter had become a fixture in her life, not just as a healer, but as a teacher. He had explained the concepts of energy, empathy, and the interconnectedness of all living beings. These ideas resonated with her on a deeper level. She had always understood the importance of leadership and connection, but now, with Dr. Carter's guidance, she saw that there was more to life than just power and control. It was during one of their lessons that Lyra first broached the subject of her people's resistance to change. She and Dr. Carter had been discussing the role of healing in society, and she had asked him point-blank. "How do you get people to accept something new?" she asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. "How do you convince them to change when they are so rooted in their old ways, Dr.?" Carter had paused, considering her question. His face softened with understanding. "Change is never easy," he said. "And it's not something that can be forced. It has to come from within. People have to see the value in it, and sometimes that takes time. But most importantly, you have to lead by example." Lyra nodded slowly, taking in his words. It was true. She had always believed that a ruler's strength came from their ability to lead with power. But now, she realized that true leadership came from the ability to inspire and connect with others. The hardest part of all, she thought, was accepting that not everyone would be on board with this new path. There would be those who would resist and those who would never understand. A week later, Dr. Carter was summoned to the royal court once again. This time, the atmosphere was different. The tension in the room was palpable, and it was clear that the situation was becoming more volatile. As Dr. Carter entered the council chamber, he was met with a cold silence. Lord Valen, who had been vocal in his opposition, stood at the front, his expression hard and unwavering. "Dr. Carter," Lord Valen began, his voice low but firm, "you have done your part in healing the princess, but now it is time for you to leave. We have given you a chance, but your methods are no longer welcome here." The room erupted into murmurs. Princess Lyra, standing near the back of the chamber, felt a rush of anger and disbelief. She had hoped with all her heart that the royal court would come to see the value in Dr. Carter's teachings. But it seemed that there were those who would never accept a human's place in their world. The king, who had been silent up until that point, stood. His voice rang out with authority, cutting through the murmurs of dissent. "Lord Valen, enough!" The court quieted, and all eyes turned to the king. "This is not just about healing," King Tharion continued. "This is about growth. It is about learning from one another, not just from what we know, but from what others can teach us. Dr. Carter's methods saved my daughter's life, and for that, he has my gratitude and respect. His presence here is not a threat, it is an opportunity." Lord Valen's eyes narrowed, and he took a step forward, his voice rising in defiance. "An opportunity to weaken us, to take away our power and pride? I will not stand for it, Tharion." Princess Lyra stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. She had listened to the arguments, the doubts, and the fears of the royal court, but now it was time for her to speak. "Father," she said, her voice strong and clear, "this is not just about power, it's about healing. It's about finding a way to move forward together. I know that not everyone will agree, but I believe in Dr. Carter's methods. I believe that the future of our people depends on our ability to adapt, to learn, and to grow." There was a long pause, and for a moment, it seemed as though the entire court was holding its breath. Finally, the king turned his gaze to his daughter, his expression unreadable. "You have made your decision, Lyra," he said softly, "but I fear that not all of our people will be as open-minded as you." "I know," Lyra replied, her voice firm. "But I will not stand by and let fear hold us back. I will lead with an open heart, and I will do what I can to show my people that there is more to strength than just power." Dr. Carter, who had been silent throughout the exchange, stepped forward at last. He looked directly at the royal court, his eyes steady and unflinching. "I didn't come here to change your world," he said. "I came to offer something that might help. I believe that healing, true healing, isn't just about fixing the body. It's about connecting with one another. If you are willing to listen, then maybe we can find a way to move forward together." The tension in the room was thick, but Dr. Carter's words had struck a chord. Lord Valan, though still resistant, looked down at the floor. The other members of the royal court exchanged glances, unsure of what to say or do. After a long silence, King Tharion spoke again, his voice softer than before. "Dr. Carter, we will allow you to continue your work with the princess, but I must warn you, this will not be easy. There are those who will never accept this, and they will fight against you at every turn." "I understand," Dr. Carter said quietly, "but I believe that if we work together, we can prove that healing doesn't just come from technology. It comes from trust, from compassion, and from understanding." Princess Lyra smiled, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. The battle was far from over, but it was a start. She knew that she had a long road ahead of her, but with Dr. Carter by her side, she felt a new sense of hope. Together, they would face the challenges ahead, and perhaps they could bring her people into a new age, one where empathy and healing went hand in hand with power. As the court session ended, Lyra walked beside Dr. Carter, her thoughts focused on the future. The Zythurians had always been proud of their strength, their technology, and their ability to conquer. But now, Lyra knew that true strength came not from dominating others, but from understanding them. And she would be the one to lead them into this new era with compassion as her guide. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be resistance, fear, and doubt, but Lyra was ready. She had found her voice, and she would fight for the future she believed in, a future where the human touch could heal not just bodies, but hearts as well. Princess Lyra stood at the balcony of the royal palace, gazing out at the vast landscape of her kingdom. The sun was setting, casting a warm orange glow over the hills and valleys that stretched out before her. She had always admired this view, but today it felt different. Today, it felt like the weight of her people's future rested heavily on her shoulders. The royal court had been abuzz with activity for the past week. Since the meeting in the council chamber, there had been more debates, more arguments. Some were in favor of Dr. Carter and his healing methods, seeing the potential for progress, while others, led by Lord Valan, continued to fight against it. The divide in the palace had grown deeper, and Lyra knew that this was just the beginning of a long struggle. But despite the opposition, she could feel a quiet hope rising within her. She had been healed not just physically but emotionally. Dr. Carter's methods had shown her something she had never considered before, a deeper connection between all living beings, a bond that went beyond technology, beyond power. It was a connection that could heal not just individuals but entire societies, if only they were willing to embrace it. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see Dr. Carter walking toward her, his usual calm demeanor present, though his eyes carried a hint of concern. He had been a constant presence in her life since her recovery, not just as a healer but as a mentor, someone who had opened her eyes to a world of possibilities. And though the royal court was divided, he had never wavered in his belief that healing came from more than just medicine. It came from understanding, compassion, and empathy. "How are you feeling?" Dr. Carter asked, his voice gentle. Lyra smiled faintly. "I feel ready. Ready to face what's coming, but I can feel the tension in the air. My people are divided, Dr. Carter. Some want to accept what you've offered, but many still refuse to see the value in it. They see it as a threat to our traditions, to our power." Dr. Carter nodded. "Change is never easy. It's a process. It won't happen overnight, and there will always be those who resist, but that doesn't mean it isn't worth fighting for." Lyra's gaze turned back to the horizon. "I never thought I'd be the one to lead this change. I thought my role was to follow tradition, to carry on the legacy of my people. But now I see that true leadership is about more than just preserving the past. It's about shaping the future. It's about guiding my people to a new understanding of what strength truly means." Dr. Carter stepped beside her, his presence comforting. "You've already taken the first step, Lyra. You've opened your mind, and now you're ready to lead others down this path. There will be resistance, but if anyone can bring your people together, it's you." Lyra turned to face him, her eyes filled with determination. "I will do whatever it takes. I believe in what you've shown me and what we can achieve together, and I won't let fear stop me." Over the following weeks, the tension in the palace only grew. Lord Valan and his supporters continued to voice their opposition, arguing that Dr. Carter's methods were not just unproven, they were dangerous. They believed that by embracing the human way of healing, they would lose their own identity, their unique strength as a species. But Lyra refused to back down. She knew that change was necessary, even if it came with challenges. She began speaking publicly about the human touch, about the lessons she had learned, and about the potential for her people to grow beyond their old ways. Slowly, she started to see small shifts in attitude. Some of the more open-minded members of the royal court began to see the wisdom in her words. They began to understand that true strength didn't come from domination or control. It came from understanding, from connection, and from the willingness to adapt. One day, as Lyra sat in the royal library reading through the ancient texts of her people, a messenger entered the room, his face solemn. "Your Highness," the messenger said, bowing low, "there has been a disturbance in the southern provinces. A group of dissenters led by Lord Valan's supporters have gathered and are demanding that you renounce Dr. Carter's methods. They say that if you do not, they will take matters into their own hands." Lyra stood up, her heart pounding in her chest. This was what she had feared. The resistance was no longer just words. It was turning into action. She had to act quickly. "Gather the council," Lyra said, her voice firm. "We need to address this immediately." Within hours, the royal court had convened, and Lyra stood before them, her face calm but resolute. Lord Valan was there, his expression as cold and hard as ever. He stood with a group of his supporters, their eyes full of defiance. "This is the price of your decisions, Princess," Lord Valan said, his voice sharp. "You have chosen to embrace these human methods, and now our people are rising against you. We will not allow this to happen. If you refuse to renounce this foolishness, we will be forced to take action." Lyra's eyes met his, unwavering. "You are wrong, Valan," she said quietly. "This is not foolishness. This is the future of our people. We are not just a kingdom of power and pride, we are a people of potential, of growth, and of healing, and that is something I will never renounce." The room fell silent, the tension thick in the air. Lord Valen stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. "Then you will have a rebellion on your hands. Your people will never accept this. And neither will I." Lyra stood tall, her heart beating steadily in her chest. "If it means standing up for what is right, then so be it. I will lead my people, no matter the cost." As the council meeting came to a close, the palace was filled with uncertainty. Lord Valen's supporters were not easily swayed, and Lyra knew that she would have to face the consequences of her decisions head-on. But she also knew that there was no turning back. She had already chosen her path, and now it was time to walk it, no matter how difficult the journey. The next few days were filled with unrest. Protests broke out in the streets of the capital, and there were whispers of rebellion in the southern provinces. Lyra's supporters gathered, but so did her opponents. It seemed as though the kingdom was on the brink of division, but Lyra did not back down. She continued to speak out, to teach, and to lead with the same conviction that had carried her through her illness. She reached out to the people, to those who were open to change, and began to build a coalition of like-minded individuals who believed in the power of healing, of empathy, and of unity. In the heart of the city, a great rally was organized, one that would bring together those who believed in the future of their people. Lyra stood before them, her voice strong and clear. "We are not just a kingdom of warriors," she said, her words resonating through the crowd. "We are a kingdom of hearts. We have the power to heal, to grow, and to build a future where all are connected. But we must choose that future, together." The crowd erupted into applause, and for the first time, Lyra saw the true potential of her people. The tide was beginning to turn. The resistance had not been defeated, but the seeds of change had been planted. And though there would be struggles ahead, Lyra was ready. She would fight for a future where healing, understanding, and empathy were the foundations of their strength. As the sun set on the kingdom, Lyra stood tall, her heart filled with a sense of purpose. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. She was no longer just the princess. She was the leader of a new era, one that would bring her people into a future defined not by power, but by the strength of their connections. And in that moment, Lyra knew that the true revolution had already begun.